mobile signal was pretty weak, and as I say, there's no Wi-Fi, so it's pretty difficult for my phone to be able to synchronize stuff across. But I can't say I've necessarily seen it working at the moment.
Yeah, so I've just fixed the audio for anybody that's in the chat room that wasn't getting it, although they only know I fixed it now. Now they can hear me. But yeah, so the notifications, I found it very hit and miss. So so I look here on my Surface now, and yeah, I can see that 9 tiles got updated. So so something has pushed, but then there's only 2 notifications, and I know that I've got multiple notifications that could have gone through that aren't showing up on there. But I also noticed, do you remember last week, I think it was, if I talked about Android notifications, which as I mentioned, you can sideload the APK for Cortana, because the Cortana for Android is US only. So
Why?
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea. So you can sideload it anyway, which I did on my old Nexus 5. And that started pushing notifications then, which was really good. This was before the Windows 10 version was released. So those notifications were coming through. So I was really good, actually. It was getting Nexus 5 notifications on my Surface. Anyway, so since that new update's come out, they stopped. And I'm getting the odd notification going through in Action Center. So obviously there must be a lot of background work to do, and I'm not getting any from the 6P either being pushed through. So there's obviously some plumbing work still going on in the background. But when it did work, it was great, especially from the Nexus. You would get Android apps that aren't available in Windows notifications being pushed through to Windows 10, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, I think, because did I read it right that the other thing was it was supposed to, like, if you dismissed notifications on one device, it would dismiss on another?
Well, that may be why.
I'm trying to remember from the release notes. I think that's because that's what they're aiming for, isn't it? That, if you kind of read a mail notification on, say, your Surface Pro, and that then disappears off your phone. I also wonder as well whether or not really to get this working consistently, it needed a new desktop build, which I think most of us were expecting last week. A similar build number for desktop compared to mobile, but that didn't surface. Oh,
oh dear.
But when it was working, I thought it was really good that these notifications get pushed through, and I think I can see the end game, that Cortana is the glue to all of this. And then no matter what, I mean, I guess on Android, on iOS and on iPhone, it's going to be harder to do because it hasn't got the same integration, the OS. But on Android and on Windows 10 Mobile, everything was synchronized up to your PC with universal notifications and universal dismiss across all the platforms. Would be a great system. So yeah,
I'm just replying to the chat room.
Yeah.
I was doing that while you two were chatting. So.
Yeah.
So basically, we just had a question. Can you help us? Is there much difference between the 950 XL and the 950? Is it just the size? And I don't know if you actually noticed this week, both of those got huge price drops in the UK.
Did they?
Yes. Yeah, the Microsoft Store. Yeah.
So not only are they were dropped, I can't remember exactly the price of the drop down, but they're certainly sort of 40 or 50 quid. But they're also now coming with the Continuum dock again as still. So very good bargains at the moment if you want to stick with Windows Phone. But as we're talking about Android, we'll go back to that.
We'll go back to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's important, isn't it, the notification sync? Because there's nothing worse than getting. At the end of the day, picking up your phone after you've been using your Surface all day, and there's like the same 20 notifications that you've then got to dismiss.
Yeah. So. And the other thing I'm testing currently as well, I don't know if you can see that, is the Moto 360 second gen, which gets notifications on the watch in Android Wear, and when you dismiss them on the watch, it actually dismisses them from Android.
Yeah.
Unlike the band where the dismissal isn't there. And I've never really complained about it on the Active. It's never really bothered me, but it is nice to be able to actually completely dismiss it from you. So if you would just delete it or whatever, it completely dismisses it, and you've got to see multiple notifications.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that.
And that's one of the things I like about the Pebble as well, because that does the same thing. You can dismiss Yep.
Before the end of the show, remind me to check the pebble amount as well, because that must be build up a bit. But the other thing that they said you could do is send this photo to my PC. Did you try that?
No, I must admit I'd completely forgotten about that. By the time Cortana was working, I'd totally forgotten.
I couldn't get it to work at all.
I saw it working this weekend, actually. I was at Microsoft for their big Azure-Craft event on Saturday, where they invited tons of kids to run around the campus, which was quite fun. learn all about microbits and satellites and things. But one of the guys there was showing me it working, and he got it working, but only on American builds.
Right, maybe that's why. Yeah. I mean, it tried to do it, but it just came up there was an error. And actually, I thought I'm going to find that really handy, because quite often I take pictures with the phone and then use them for a blog post. And where I've got everything synced up with OneDrive, it sometimes takes quite a while. So being able to send it straight away would be quite good. But like I said, I couldn't get that to work.
It does feel, we've been saying this for years now. I do wish Microsoft could solve this US centric rollout of stuff, because it's just, Apple doesn't do it, Android doesn't do it.
Well, actually, that's not totally true. Apple do it to some extent, but that tends to be only on their preview stuff. They know the public releases are always worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, that the Android Cortana app, apart from, I know the issues I mentioned a few weeks ago, it's working fine. So I don't know quite why it's not working now, but the actual app itself works. I can open this up now. I can see my interests, everything. It's just like it looks exactly the same as on the phone. And you can set reminders and all the usual stuff, and it shows you how many steps you've done, and it's as good as the phone, the Windows 10 mobile one. So I don't know why they don't release it. It can't, I'm sure there can't be that much difference, but it is annoying. So what else was new in this build? So that was a bit. How have you found the performance?
Yeah, it's been really good. Battery life has been brilliant. I'd say better than the previous build, which is odd given the notes. They don't mention which models it particularly does. I know the band software has had some battery drain issues, but no, the battery life has been great. I mean, the 930 is not exactly kind on its battery, but no, it's been working really well. I've had a few spontaneous reboots, mainly when trying to use Cortana. But I think that's also linked to my Bluetooth issues, which I think must be something to do with my phone. I think I've mentioned before that a few days after I got it got a good soaking in a British monsoon that seemed to come from nowhere. And it's always had a few little niggles since. So I am kind of cautious to not to kind of consider that. But overall, it's been absolutely great. It's been really stable. I'd say apart from those couple of spontaneous reboots, everything's working really well. The one thing that's working really well is the message sync, and between that and my Surface, I really like that. A couple of my apps are a bit keep losing the background tasks, but I think that's because they haven't been updated. My favourite weather app hasn't been updated since about February this year. I think might have been late last year. Which is a bit disappointing because I really like it, but the background task keeps stopping, which means my lock screen and the live tile doesn't update. But apart from that, it's been really good. Been really impressed with it.
I put it on my 950, and it's working really well. And my main sim is in the 6P, but the data sim's in this. So I haven't used it for phone calls, but I put it on charge. When was it? This afternoon. It's on 85% with 22 hours remaining. So it's got plenty of life in there. So I think when I go to Le Mans, I'll probably switch the Sims back round again, because you can just get so good battery life out of a Windows phone.
Yeah.
Although this, to be fair, this 6P does get good battery as well, but not as good as the 950. I think that's probably the best device I've had for battery life. So I found this build pretty good actually, and there's a few changes. They fixed the glance screen issue as well, so I think always show glance is on now and things like that. So have a look at the links, but I'm finding this build very, very stable and no issues with it at all. So I think that's definitely a good sign as the release notes get shorter and or the known issues get shorter.
Yeah, I mentioned last week that my 950, sorry, not 950, my 930 keeps waking up when it's in the cradle. And I thought it was due to the touchscreen sensitivity or the double tap to wake. And I thought I'd solved it by switching those off, but the next day it was back again. I'm almost certain from all the testing I've been able to do that it is the where the cradle pinches the phone. It is somehow pressing the camera button, not enough to trigger it. And even if I turn off the use the camera button to wake phone, it still does exactly the same thing. And what I hadn't actually realised is on the official Nokia wireless cradle, where it pinches, you've got the sponge bits that kind of grip the phone. There is actually a cutout in the sponge to stop it pressing the camera button.
Right.
Which I hadn't noticed before, but it's clearly doing something, because it sits on my wireless charger on my desk all day and it doesn't wake up. We've got one of the old the pillow, the Fat Boy pillow, which it sits on at home, and that it doesn't wake from that. And if I put it in the wireless charging cradle, just resting it in without the clamp shut, again it doesn't wake up. So I think probably it's something that's maybe changing the build, because it didn't used to do this, but whether or not it'd be something that they fix, I don't know. If not, I might have to be looking at a different wireless cradle.
Yeah, you could always do. Yeah, it's just how they catch the buttons. I know in my car I had the same thing. If I slotted it down too far, it would catch the buttons and turn the volume down, because the 950's got the volume rocker with the power in the middle.
Of course, yeah. And it did always really frustrate me, really, that the officially made Nokia cradle didn't kind of suit the phones better. You'd think if anyone was going to put the clamps where the camera button isn't, it would be Nokia's own.
Cradle. So often, actually, it's really weird though. But you do see that quite often. I wonder how many they're just recycling OEM or ODM charging code.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the sponge has got a cutout, which I hadn't even noticed it before, but they've definitely tried to work around it, but it doesn't solve the problem completely.
No. So that was the new mobile build. So, like you said, with no PC build, but we hopefully will get one this week with one.
Of course, we did also have another mobile build as well.
Yes, we did, didn't we? We had on the release preview ring, we had the is it 10.586.338?
Yeah, 338. Yeah, which I'm running on my 950 now. And I have to say, it has made quite some differences. I guess it's picking up some of the stuff you guys have been seeing. I've definitely noticed a much better battery life. It runs cooler, which is cool. One of the things it sort of mentions is somewhere in the latest notes is about something about display. And what I've noticed is a lot of the dialogues that used to be cut off aren't cut off now. So you used to lose the bottom of words on certain dialogues, and they seem to. A lot of the apps now seem to not do that anymore, which is good, because that's always one of my big frustrations with the whole. How can you release a phone which has clearly got bad UX on it? But that seems to have been somewhat sorted. So yeah, so all round, I'm quite impressed with this one. I think they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think there was a release for the PC, wasn't it, on the Threshold 2. There was an update for the Threshold 2 for just the general PC ring, wasn't it? That's got some refinements in.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what fixes we get with the PC version this week, and these builds are slowing down now as we get towards the July date. So
I told you.
They're supposed to be speeding up. They did last time.
Yeah, they did kind of speed up with less changes between the releases. Now we seem to be slowing down. So
I think maybe we've overestimated Ian.
Yeah, Gary's coming looking good on that so far.
Yeah, well, when I knew Donna was taking over, you see.
So maybe by next week's show we'll have a new build that we can talk about as well. So on the phone side, so this. I mentioned last week that I was going to be trying a Nexus. So I got the Nexus 6P with a Moto 360 as well. So currently carrying two phones and two wearing a band on each wrist at the moment as well. So
that sounds like me at the weekend. I had 3 phones and 3 things on my wrist. Just demo things. So that was quite funny.
So first of all, I would say Android has certainly improved, even though the Nexus 5 that it has is essentially the same version as Android that's on this one. Just the fact of actually using it as opposed to just having it as a test phone makes a difference, really. Once you start relying on things for your daily driver, you see a different side to the OS. And it's funny that one of the things, Jason, you talked about was Bluetooth issues. It's a problem with the 6P as well. you would think,
really?
Yeah, you'd think that that wouldn't be an issue at all. But most of the time it works, but sometimes you've got to turn Bluetooth on and back on again in the off and back on again in the car to get it to pair up properly, to resync. Or if you receive a phone call, you answer the call. I don't know about how yours is, but on mine I've got a separate Bluetooth device for the music than I have for the telephony.
Yeah, that's exactly the same as me. Yeah.
So music's all playing fine. You receive a phone call, that works fine. And then when you finish the call, it's disconnected the Bluetooth audio, and you've got to restart that, which I never had that problem with the Windows 10 mobile. But I had that. I did have one occasion where it just wouldn't answer the phone. I was pressing the button on the car, and he wouldn't answer. So I gave up with that. I thought I'll press the button on the phone, and that wouldn't do it either. So, it's these issues are not unique to Windows 10 mobile or Windows Phone, as sometimes you think everything else is perfect, and it's not always the case. Some things are interesting, like so battery life, like this 6P. Sometimes it'll report, I almost get 2 days out of it, and other times it's like, let's say, 8 hours. It really does depend on what you use. And do you know what the biggest drain is for battery life? The Microsoft Health app.
Yeah. Well, at least it's consistent across platforms.
Yeah, I mean, now this is saying I've got 67% with 9 hours left. Yesterday, I think it was something like 2 days with 67%. So it's very, is very usage dependent. I've done a lot with it today, fiddling around, testing things. So that's why. But one thing I did notice is the quality of the Microsoft apps, aside from Groove, which we'll come back to. The quality of the Microsoft apps is really good and helps with the transition from one OS to the other. Microsoft Health app is identical. You can't see any difference. So I don't know what technology they've used for developing this, Gary, whether they've done some cross-platform development, or they've actually just designed them to look the same.
It was mentioned in the keynote at I think it was either Evolve or Build that Health was written in using Xamarin.
Right. Well, that's why, because you can't tell any difference. They've got the same functionality and the same look and feel. Outlook is a good app. It's probably as good as the built-in Gmail app, if not better. Actually, it's got the focused mailboxes, which I really like. OneNote, which is good. OneDrive is good. OneDrive is pretty much the same as the Windows 10 mobile. So all these things really help with when you move over. The fact that you've got all your notebooks and everything, all your documents, camera uploads, and everything is all there. So I think that's a good side. The only thing that does let it down is the Groove Music app. It really is a poor relation compared to the Windows 10 app. As we've said on this show, for last year, the Groove app has gone from being very basic to being pretty good, actually, and pretty rich on the Windows 10 and Windows 10 mobile. And actually, the one on Android is very basic. Looks like Xbox Music, in fact, which it looks like it's a year, 12 months, maybe 18 months behind the Windows 10 version, and it's really not good enough to use as a day-to-day music app. It just about works, but it's very basic. Whereas you compare it to Google Play Music, which I used to use in the past, and so I had all my collection already on there. That is really pretty sophisticated. A lot more things around playlists and auto playlists and radio stations is much better than on even the Windows 10 version of Groove. So I think there is a bit of a gap there. Of course, the good thing is, and I did write an article how to do it, you can easily sync your collection up. I've got my Groove music stored in OneDrive, and I've got the Google Play Music Windows tool pointing at the OneDrive folder, so everything's in sync. So I've not really lost anything, but I do prefer the Google Play Music over the Groove Music on Windows. The Groove Music on Android isn't really good enough, so that's a bit of a letdown. It's amazing, some things you miss, like Tweetium. It's the Twitter app is very similar to the Twitter app for Windows 10, but I do miss Tweetium. It's a much better app. But then you've got other apps like the driving app and the navigation app in Google Maps is much better than the Windows one. So in all, I think I finding the Android experience is a more polished experience. You can tell that it's more mature than Windows 10 mobile, and the apps have got more development, and all the third-party apps, you know, the Facebook app, the Instagram, Swarm, all these kind of apps are all better developed on Android than they are on Windows 10 mobile. So that's where you can really see a difference. So, so far, I mean, I'm finding this. I've not really missed anything apart from Tweetium and the Groove Music app. I've managed to move over fairly easily, really. And I think you can see where Microsoft's strategy can work, really, is just by writing good apps for Android and iOS.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult, isn't it? You know, the experience has got to be everywhere, and that's what I was saying earlier about. I do think that you know, Android apps on Chromebooks is a real problem for Microsoft, because, you know, they're still struggling to, you know, attract developers, and the problem is that software companies can get away with just desktop apps, you know, like the Sonos is a desktop app, Spotify, there's a desktop app, so there's no real motivation for them to write, you know, an app store app for that. But unfortunately, that's the way consumers are going, that we are going to a more mobile computing experience, and I think, you know, having those apps available on something like a Chromebook, you know, I've criticized it, saying its main problem is it has to be online, but you know, when are we ever offline?
Yeah.
You know, it's even if I'm using my Surface Pro 3, I tend to use it, you know, I'll use it more if it's connected to the internet. You know, I haven't really got much use it other than playing around with, you know, work things when it's disconnected. But yes, I mean, I guess you're getting used to, you know, like you said, downloading all the apps that otherwise you've kind of learned to live without.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And of course, the other thing, you've got Google Now, which I've used before, which is very similar to Cortana, sort of with the notifications. Some of the nice things like automatic parking locations and things like that, and a bit more a rich interface. But aside from that, and there's a few things that bug me, like the I use my phone as a clock at night. So you've got the glance screen, which just has the clock on, and it's supposed to do that on this. But I've got it. It's called Daydream on Android, and I've got it set to Daydream to night mode clock when you plug the power in. But after I think it's like 2-minute timeout, it just goes off again, so it goes back to blank. So there's a few minor things, and if you manually put night mode on, it's fine, you know. So there's a few things like that I was surprised to see issues really like that, and this Bluetooth issues. But as like I said, the quality of Microsoft apps, apart from Groove, is really good, and every bit as good as Google's apps. Although I've noticed that the Gmail now has gained the ability to work with Exchange as well.
Yes, yeah, that was fairly recent, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I've got both systems set up, and so I'm seeing duplicate notifications, but I'm not sure which one I prefer, to be honest. And of course, the other thing I'm trying as well is this Moto 360, a 2nd gen one, which Android Wear has way more functionality than the Band, but it certainly doesn't feel like an elegant device compared to the Band. I know the Band's not particularly elegant, but the Band 2 is a nice design, and while it's fairly simple, it does what it needs to do very well. This Moto 360 does feel a little bit clunky and a little bit hokey, if you know what I mean. But it is very good. I mean, you can read your emails on here properly. The Band, you just get the headline and a bit of it. This, you can actually read it, and you know, you've got things like the authentication apps on there. You've got full Google Maps. You've got full apps that run on here rather than just the tiles. So, you know, OneNote, I've got Outlook, I've got Google Play Music, I've got Skype on here. You know, proper apps that run on here when they make sense to, and I find it, and the notifications and things like that. So I'm finding this really nice. I've only started to use this today, but also I'm not sure the battery life is as good as the band as well, but it's hard to judge when you just got new things because you fiddle with them.
That's very true. I mean, I had the Huawei here, Google Watch.
That's the new one, isn't it?
Yeah,
that really looks nice, actually.
That's a really nice watch, and that's got a bit of style to it as well. I think that whole platform, Gigaware platforms. I mean, certainly the new stuff they announced this year, once they comes out, where you can be able to run apps standalone on the watch. That platform's definitely got something going for it. But the big thing is still the battery life. I mean, the fact they go into this sort of passive mode just to save battery when you're not looking at them. Makes it very unglanceable as a watch. I found. I know the band's got the same thing. You need to be able to turn it off. But I mean, I'm always comparing it to the Pebble, where I get 10 days battery life, and I've got my screen on all the time.
Yeah.
So things. Talking about the Pebble, should we have a nightly look at what the total's at?
Yeah, go on. What is it?
So today they broke the 10 million barrier. They have 10,500,244.
Wow.
So I mean, part of that is because they picked up quite a few people now, because they've announced that the Pebble Core is going to be supporting Amazon Alexa. So that's the same technology as in the Amazon Echo box.
Right.
I kind of call you about a really good voice recognition system built into this little clip-on device you can clip on you, which has GPS and 3G connectivity. I think the Amazon Core is actually probably the most exciting bit about that whole campaign. Sorry, the Pebble Core, not the Amazon Core. Yeah. It might be maybe Amazon would take them over.
No, I've seen a lot of people saying, it's got a lot of ideas that you can use with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got two. I mean, obviously they've looked at it as, when they designed it for runners, because they've really gone into the health side of things. But for hackers, it's got so many possibilities there. I can see it as a control system for the home. Just clip it on you, and you've got that microphone with you all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that always on connectivity, I think, is the main thing. Yeah.
Admittedly, it would only just about last a day on charge, so there is that. But going forward, I can see battery technology is always improving. Probably the next generation one will be a lot better.
Yeah, 10 million. I mean, that really is going to help them develop the product.
Yeah.
And there's still 22 days to go.
Yeah.
At what point do they run out of things to rewards left? Oh, they've still got. Oh, they haven't got that many left, have they? The 79. Some of them have gone. $79 one has got a couple hundred left.
Yeah, they added a few last minute. So I guess, and that's quite a common thing on these campaigns, that you get some extra bits near the end.
Yeah, like the early bird Pebble and 2 is gone, so 10,000 backers. Yeah. So yeah, there's I think if you can get the Pebble 2 in one of the colours, there's still there's got 100 and something left. So yeah, you've got to get quick if you want one of those.
Yeah, and I do think, having looked at it and really analysed it, the Pebble Time 2 is quite a compelling device, because it's got rid of everything that was the complaint about the previous generation, which is the big bezel, and you've got a big screen, but it's still got all that battery saving on it. So I must admit, I'm looking forward to playing one.
Yeah, it does look a really nice device. This the whole issue of the sort of smartwatches, or the whole technology smartwatch, it feels early days yet.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, there's a long way to go. There'll be a big shake-up in the market along the way, I think, as well. And I think the device which seems to be falling by the wayside is Apple's Watch. I'm hearing rumours that the sales are well down.
Yeah, I think I wonder really, because Android Wear, I think, has got that sort of appeal to people who like to mess about and play with these things, which appeals to Android users in a lot of ways. Whereas iOS, because it's so structured and it just works, but it appeals less to tinkerers, enthusiasts, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I should mention, when I was talking about Android, the Microsoft Health app, they've added Cortana support for that if you're in the US, or you've got the side loaded app like me. But so they're really pushing that development, especially on the health app, but as a whole thing, there are apps opening up to onto these other platforms. It's a really good idea. In fact, did you see that last week? I think they announced earlier this week that the holographic SDK is being made available to third parties.
Yes, so that was a really big move actually, because a lot of people thought it would be stuck on HoloLens or third-party versions of the HoloLens, but they've actually opened it up to the HTC Vive, to Samsung's VR Start platform. Actually, I'm not sure they have that one, but certainly Oculus, they've done it too. But basically, they've opened it up to anybody who wants to implement it on their VR platform.
So does that kind of mean then that they're trying to position this as holographic platform as the sort of the Windows for hologram, as a platform that developers can build on with their own devices?
Yeah. And that could be really clever, because VR's actually getting quite a bit of buzz at the moment.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
And certainly some of the stuff that's out there as possibilities. I mean, the idea of VR or AR, augmented reality without glasses, is getting some traction at the moment. Sort of like in-room projectors. There's some ideas, some really clever ideas around that. So you could see that coming in, and maybe the future is a post-tablet, post-computer world.
And that's where Microsoft, I think, essentially missing the boat with mobile. Yeah. You do seem that they seem to be a bit further ahead on the AR side of it, mixed reality as they call it, don't they?
Yeah, reality. I mean, I think it's interesting that the holographic computing side allows you to do mixed reality in a VR platform, because you actually do it the other way around. You mix your outside world into your VR world.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than your VR world.
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting.
I mean, for Microsoft, if they just have the platform and developers and OEMs use it, whether it's VR, AR, or a combination of so it doesn't matter. It's like, their platform's there, and I guess if it somehow does this mean that they potentially have universal app support?
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's the platform, isn't it?
Yeah, it's his platform, and you're starting to get some of those universal apps appearing. I think Mail made its way to HoloLens recently, so there's a lot of potential out there, and I think this gets around some of those questions about the whole HoloLens experience with the actual device, where you can go from that. So yeah, I think it's definitely a very interesting move,
and it's almost as though that they take a back seat on mobile to jump ahead to the next platform.
Yeah, and you can imagine, and this has been spoken about a lot. The idea of the projecting the eye projection phone. So there was I can't remember, it was CERN or one of the American universities did this, but basically a combination eye tracker and dual projector system, which allowed you to simulate VR in front of you from a phone. And you can see that becoming the next big thing. You just don't have a phone, you don't have a touch screen, you just have some sort of, well, maybe like one of these things that Pebble have come up with, the core just clipped on you somewhere, which is projecting stuff around you. So yeah, it may be. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the post-phone world at the moment. We've certainly seen a drop-off on phone sales. I mean, I think everybody's got a phone. It's actually difficult at the moment to see any reason to upgrade a phone.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at this 6P. The only actual take away the OS, the only difference is the fingerprint reader.
Yeah, that's right.
And the camera is quite good on this, but
screens have reached a resolution where if you go any higher, you can't really tell the difference. Okay, you might be able to do something with the screen colors and the quality, but that's basically where you've got to. And I know people have sort of said, well, the 950 is not big enough for the jump from the 920 or whatever. And equally, that's the same thing happening in Amazon. You look at the iPhones, there's not much difference between them. Maybe, I don't know what they're going to put wireless charging in, invent it. But yeah, so there's very little real reason to upgrade a phone nowadays, and that's certainly what I'm hearing, that people are hanging on to their phones a lot longer these days.
Yeah, I think it was a report today saying about that. And I think especially and that's where I think it's important that companies like Microsoft, from their point of view, have good apps for all the systems, because that's where you can get your revenue and your buy-in then, isn't it? Not the actual OS that's run underneath, it's the Groove or OneDrive or whatever is the ecosystem that you use.
Exactly. So I think it's an interesting world we live in at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that's why we like doing this. I mean, Jason, have you got the Xbox Preview program on your device?
No, I was going to ask you both that.
I haven't.
I've still got the Xbox Preview out from the previous, the kind of Threshold, I guess Threshold 2 release, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For the Xbox One, and I did look to see whether I could opt in, but I think for now Microsoft have said that it's really the people that gave the most feedback.
Yeah,
during the last program that will be kind of given preferential treatment, and then they'll slowly ramp it out. So I think, as far as I can tell, I'm still enrolled in the program. It would just be a matter of me getting the opportunity.
Yeah. I think the last time you mess up the Xbox for your kids.
Yes. Yes.
But one of the really mess it up this time.
Yeah, and one of the main new changes. I mean, there's a lot of changes, but the one that I thought was most interesting was Cortana.
Now, I want your take on this discussion, because I've been having this quite big discussion about the whole thing of just using Hey Cortana rather than Xbox. So I sit in this room and I've got 4 computers and an Xbox 360, and obviously I might have an Xbox One at some point. And if I say Hey Cortana, which one responds to me?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I'm looking now. If I say Hey Cortana, nothing's responded for this time, but there's potential. There's about 4 or 5 devices in here that could be listening. So yeah,
I've just said that, and everybody's phones and computers out there suddenly stop. But particularly with the Xbox, there's a distinct use case for talking to that in voice, which is different to talking to your phone, talking to your computer. And I think I'm wondering if that's actually a bad move to use Hey Cortana for that, rather than Xbox, and whether it should be optional, or whether we actually need to say Hey Cortana on Xbox.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. So if you're sat on the sofa with your Surface and you're playing on your Xbox and you want to pause your Xbox, currently now you go Xbox pause.
Yeah.
But now what you're going to do, Hey Cortana, pause the Xbox, and then in the meantime your Surface is going, what are you talking about? And your phone's picked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's context awareness, and I can see the point of having one assistant, so it doesn't matter which device picks it up. It just needs to know what the context is.
Essentially, what you really want to be able to do is to name the device, don't you?
Well, you do, and you don't. I mean, if in a truly intelligent home, it should know what you want. It should know the context. Context is king on this stuff. So it should know that you're watching TV, and when you say pause, you want to pause whatever's on TV. That command doesn't mean anything anywhere else.
Yep.
So all the other Hey Cortana should really ignore it.
But then if I say Hey Cortana, call Gary via Skype,
which one does it go?
Which one's going to do that?
Yeah, and maybe then it needs to ask you.
Yes, which is perhaps where you have a central device, and like you said, context is the key here. Then that all your devices on the network, they know that the Xbox is listening, so the others don't need to listen.
Well, they all listen, but they pass it on to the Xbox.
Yeah.
Because then you can actually command the. So the nice thing about this is if you've got devices in the other room, and if they do make context aware, you could pause your Xbox from another room by talking to, say, Surface.
Yep. Yeah.
So that could work. So I see both sides of this argument, but it does depend how intelligent they make it.
Yeah, and you can pretty much show that neural network link devices for Cortana isn't. Well, it certainly hasn't been talked about, so I very much doubt that's in the initial release anyway.
Yeah. So, but it's coming. They're getting rid of Xboxes. I did like the one comment the other day. I can't remember who said it, so I can't give credit. But they were saying, "So are we going to say Hey Cortana on now?"
Yeah.
To see if Xbox, or even the slightly more worrying, Hey Cortana, are you turned on yet?
Yeah. So they're not going to keep it so that there'll be specific Xbox voice commands like Xbox on, Xbox off, and then just have Hey Cortana as a.
I don't know.
I would have thought so.
We haven't heard that yet. I mean, I would think it might be Hey Cortana Xbox on, potentially. But the trigger word is going to be Hey Cortana, apparently.
Yeah, I did notice as well that for the first time they said clearly that it will work over headsets and Connect.
Yes.
Although turning the Xbox on does need Connect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think before they were quite vague on that, and there was some kind of discussions about whether or not Hey Cortana would only work with Connect, but I mean it makes sense that it works over the headsets.
And I think there's a technical reason why the headsets don't work because they're actually not powered.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So that makes sense. Whereas the Connect is, because it's independently powered.
I do like the idea though, Gary, that you're saying sort of these devices all talking to each other, knowing the context, because with the Connect it knows where you are, in which room you're in. So you could do sort of the smart home thing.
Well, you see, so I've gone one step beyond the smart home now. Because the smart home, so there's home automation, then there's smart home, and there's what I really think we should be aiming for, which is the intelligent home.
Yes.
So the home that acts as a member of the family, and
leaves the cups and the dishes lying everywhere.
But perhaps a very good member of the family. But he's responsive.
Your kids.
But he's actually responsive to context. Because context, as I say, is king on this stuff, and it's been the most difficult thing to do. It's really difficult to get context right. I mean, I've told the story about the lights command in my flat before now, where getting the context of if I say lights on now, the lights only turn on in this room because it knows where I am. And that's all about context, because that's what you want. That Star Trek moment of going into a room and saying lights, it's got to know what you want by lights. Do you want the lights to come up full? Do you want to come up part? It's all about learning your behavior and learning. And I think that's why Microsoft have made this huge investment in both cognitive services and the bot systems that they're turning out, because both of those are really needed for intelligence.
Yeah, I think there's a massive potential for it, and I know that Amazon have done a lot with the Alexa, isn't it, in the US?
So Alexa, which is part of the whole Amazon Echo thing, and that's not big time in space, because it is really intelligent and it works with context. And it's getting better with context. Some of the phraseology is still a bit weird, but it's getting better. And every time you say Alexa, people around America starts jumping out of the skins because it starts doing things.
Yeah.
But that's show, and that's the take up on that has shown that there's a real market for that really intelligent home, and it's something we haven't really managed to achieve yet. I mean, I've been trying to get to that point for probably the last 5 or 6 years. It's something I've been working on in the flat's been a sort of test case of how we can actually do that, and it's getting better. I mean, certainly things work the way I kind of expect them to work. If I turn the lights on and it's getting dusk outside, it might ask me now if I wanted to close the curtains, and I can just say yes, and the curtains close. Those things are sort of things that a family member would do.
Yeah, I mean, there's an amazing amount of potential. I mean, that's one of the things I forgot to mention with the Nexus, the OK Google thing is it's really sophisticated now, and it's got really good, and it actually, the context awareness seems to be a bit better than in with Cortana, and you could do some really good stuff with it now.
Yeah, it scares me sometimes how much Google knows about me.
Yeah, that's right.
But it does need to know that to get the context. I mean, it actually, really weirdly, I'm sure someone else said this on Twitter. I'm sure it's now prompting me things on the Google Now cards, which I've only ever spoken about.
Yeah, well, but it actually works very well when you OK Google and you just ask it something.
Yeah.
Or directions or whatever, and it just really, it's very good at.
I mean, I think the different approaches are interesting. The Siri approach, which is supposedly conversational but isn't quite there. Google's approach, which has always been just very straightforward, no attempt to make it seem like a person. It's just a, and then you've got the Cortana approach, which is very conversational and getting better all the time at that conversational. It's going to be interesting to see which one is where people want to go. I mean, certainly from the Amazon Echo experience, there is that idea of a bit of a conversational context aware type thing seems to be quite popular, but whether Microsoft can make Cortana that, I'm not sure.
But yeah, I think I had a bizarre with Cortana today. So I've got Hey Cortana working on my phone, and I was driving to pick up my son. And I knew it was getting close to the time I was supposed to pick him up, So I said, "Hey Cortana," my 9:30 came on, and she started listening. And I said, "What's the time?" And she came back with the definition of time. I had to ask, "What's the current time?" before it would come back with the actual time. And it's just things like that. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about how to phrase my question.
To come back and say 42, and then
yeah.
And that's the difficulty, because contextually you're always going to be asking what the current time is.
Yes.
And that should be able to pick that up. And I suspect if you're in America, it would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to know what time was, I'd say define time or tell me what time it is. But,
yeah. They're all very powerful platforms, and my experiences were that Cortana was ahead of sort of Google now, but then having used it recently, I'm not sure that's the case now. I think it's probably the other way around, but very close. And I don't really use Siri enough to warrant, to be able to have a good opinion. I've tried it a few times and not really use it. You've got to use these things all the time to really to get to know them. But I have noticed that say on my wife's iPhone, she never uses it, but and the kids never use Hey Cortana either. So there is perhaps a bit of that. It's all very advanced, but unless you actually use it, then getting people to use them is another thing.
I think I think the biggest difficulty is the thing we mentioned earlier, Bluetooth, because Bluetooth, the standard for Bluetooth headphone stuff, particularly what's been implemented in the cars, and most of this is the car fault, not the phone fault, because you, as you rightly said, Ian, it's this problem on Android as well as it is on Windows Phone, has made it very difficult to use these voice assistants in the car, which is the one place you really want to be able to use them.
I mean, that's the one thing I did notice, that the Cortana uses the Bluetooth telephony to work, which is slow, whereas Google uses the mic of the phone, which is fast. So it actually works better that way. But it's just a Bluetooth implementation. But I think we've kind of run out of time already. Some good stuff to talk about there. So I didn't get to mention the new Plex app, but I'll include a link in the show notes, and you can have a look at that. And next week we might have a PC build to talk about as well. But we've got probably a bit of a different schedule next week, so we'll have to work on that. We probably won't be recording next Tuesday evening because I'm not around. I don't think, Gary, you're around either. So you can follow us on Twitter to work out what we're up to. So Gary, where can we follow you?
So you can follow me on Twitter at Gary with two R's, WMA. Gary with two W's, that'll be good. At Gary with two R's, WMA on Twitter, or you can look at Fascinating Tech.
And Jess, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Database Chase.
Excellent stuff. So we should be back next week at some point. Follow me at Iris Dixon to find out when we're recording. Or you can always get us on demand on YouTube or on the podcast from your favorite podcast viewer, listener. So until next week, we'll see you then.
Take care.